Hi everyone! Demonetizing or replacing US dollar in global markets is the topic of this video. Well, we knew that the Cold War ended right after the Soviet communism fell down, and the liberal democracy prevailed, and it would last forever, as Francis Fukuyama argued in his famous book, The End of History and the Last Man. He was maybe right in saying that the Western type of capitalism, free market capitalism, would prevail. But was he right about his idea on the future of liberal democracy? I think it's a question mark, because after almost 3 decades since the Soviet communism collapsed, we now discuss the American-dominated global politics, whether it will collapse or not. And we do it during our coronavirus lockdown days. Well, nowadays, in the last 1 or 2 months, billions of people are locked down at home, and we just time to time go out home to buy some necessary foods. But we buy them by using our national currencies or our bank cards. Do you think we will buy them after this pandemic issue ends in the same way? Can we go on buying goods with national currencies as we have been familiar with? Perhaps most of us heard of a conspiracy theory suggesting that a radical change in global financial system would happen and US dollar demonetized in coming years. Is it truly a conspiracy theory, or we are locked down following a pandemic panic just before the new era starting, in which US dollar will no more be the stockpiling currency? Well, it was last August 2019, the Bank of England governor, Mr. Carney, said that the US dollar is now a barrier to global trade. So the head of Bank of England said the US dollar could be replaced by other currencies as the world's reserve currency. He argued that there is now need to stop global savings glut, which has caused low inflation and other problems concerning the rate of interest. Well, saving glut means you prefer putting your money aside rather than investing or spending. And most people and governments naturally around the world prefer to save US dollars. This is a problem. For this very reason, the head of Bank of England put it, a digital currency can dampen the domineering influence of US dollar on global trade. It might happen soon. The Chinese currency, the renminbi, and Facebook's digital currency, Libra, both mentioned to balance US dollar. Well, they won't simply overtake dollar's position totally, but to balance it in global trade. This is the point. Well, it is noteworthy that it was same days President Trump increased tariffs against China and declared Fed Chairman Powell as enemy of the United States. And he asked a question in his Twitter account saying, who is our bigger enemy, Powell or Chinese president? US president reaction to Fed chairman has to do with rate of interest and monetary politics, yes. But it is, I think it was not a coincidence, because White House criticized Fed when US-China trade wars escalating. So it appears that the story of world's reserve currency should change. Well, what Bank of England governor said about the US dollar and its future was not a new idea. The future of US dollar has been debated since the last decade of Cold War, namely since the 1980s. An article published by Richard Cooper at Foreign Affairs in 1984, suggesting that the technological developments will sooner or later bring about a change in global monetary system. Saying so, Richard Cooper was from Harvard University, and what he wrote was not a conspiracy theory. He defended the idea of a single world currency. Single world currency, defended an idea in the 1980s. Another Harvard professor, Kenneth Rogoff, a prominent economist and a chess grandmaster, he has been a professor at of economics at Harvard University, and he was economic counselor and chief economist of IMF before 2003 for 2 years. And he was among Fed governors and well known with his support to globalist politics. He penned an article published in 2001 at American Economic Review, I think. The title of the article was, "Why Not a Global Currency?" Why not a global currency? Well, there are economic details, I will not mention them. Briefly, he said in 2001, "It seems number of currencies in the world will decline over the next 2 decades. But a single world currency is not a good idea. There should be at least 3 or 4 global currencies like dollar, euro, yen, and maybe some others." Well, in 2018, The Economist magazine told the world, "Get ready for a world currency. Get ready for a world currency." And the governor of Bank of England in Nexi in 2019 gave the impression that the US dollar will no more dominate global trade. Kenneth Rogoff recently penned an article for The Guardian saying that a deep economic slump and financial crisis are unavoidable, giving the impression that the pandemic panic will last or impact the global economy a couple of years. Professor Rogoff, I think, warns that the recovery will not be easy. Well, you know, the magazines, the Foreign Affairs is a US-based globalist magazine, and The Economist is Britain-based globalist magazine. The future of global politics long have been discussed at such magazines. One World, One Money topics discussed in 1998 and later used in The Economist magazine. We are familiar with that, with such topics. This is not something new. But the problem here, if it's a problem, has much to do with how to do it. It might sound weird. How can or how come we demonetize our currencies? Let me refer to history briefly here. How we started using banknotes. How did we start using banknotes? French members of the Rothschild family in France, they are pronounced as Rothschild. So James de Rothschild in 1866, he was interviewed by the Economist about financial regulations and establishing new banks in some European countries. He pointed out that it would be seen weird 2 decades ago in Europe, in France, if you were talking about exchanging banknotes. People would laugh at you. And he said 20 years ago, you couldn't have traveled in France with a banknote. No one would have received it or have changed it. And he said, Rome was not built in a day. Having said this, Baron James de Rothschild defended the idea of change on time. He defended changes on time, step by step. That was history. Who knows, in the near future, most people maybe will not be users of Facebook like social media giants for the social media purposes only, but they will be users of digital currency like Libra to buy goods like today we buy them with our credit cards or bank cards whatsoever. But another issue here is it good to see a decline of the dollar, so the decline of American power? There are strategists who predict that the future of US global dominance would change. Jeremy Rifkin is one of them. He argued that the future is more brilliant for Europe rather than US for various reasons. Most striking point in his remarks, I think, is that the oil-based global energy market would collapse. So the new industrial revolution will cause the destruction of oil or say fossil fuel markets. And very recently we have just seen that oil prices went down dramatically. Another American strategist, George Friedman, he also considers the coming years, 2020s, a chaotic decade for the American people in his final book published in the last January. And according to another Harvard professor, Shoshana Zuboff, who is a social psychologist, capitalism is getting mutation to a form in which privacy and freedom, so democratic values, are all at stake. That's why she has called it surveillance capitalism. According to that theory, which is not a conspiracy one, big data will control not only your private information, but also will aim at dictating or directing your behaviors. So we need a big change consisting of revolutions like change of money, change of behaviors, and change of lifestyle and everything. Do we? Will the pandemic issue play here a pioneering role for a tremendous social and economic transformation? This is an important question mark, I think. Well, WHO, World Health Organization, a global health organization represented at UN, declared pandemic in the second week of March, and that declaration perhaps started a new phase of history. It started a panic which destroyed global order as we know. Flights cancelled, supply-demand chain destroyed, travels and mobility stopped. All happened in just 1 month, in even less than a month. This is amazing or terrible or whatsoever, but it is like a World War era without conventional weapons. What has happened just after the WHO declaration in March 11 so far was well predicted in 2010 by a Rockefeller Foundation report for the future scenarios in terms of a lockdown across the world and its devastating ramifications not only on vulnerable economies but also well-developed or well-prepared economies. So people will get used to, they will adapt a new era maybe. Even if you living in a well-democratic country, of course you don't have right to demonstrate now. It is illegal. No government will give you such a right to protest. So isn't it like a World War era? Just we don't know how long it will last. Even if you go out to protest, you will not feel threatened by the government only, but also by a virus for your life. So the threat is invisible. That's why the situation lockdown is so far convincible. In this way, not millions but billions of people around the world drawn direct into a new psychological state following the March 11 declaration of coronavirus pandemic. Well, the more it continues, the more devastating it be. Who knows, most people will be scared of touching most items or will avoid getting together. This trauma might cause change of social and economic behaviors of billions of people. Meantime, people will adapt it, get used to a new industrial revolution maybe. When we are back to history, we know that it was not announced as an industrial revolution when it started first in England in the 18th century or in most part of Europe. When the oil age started in the 20th century, I mean, oil replaced the coal for trains and vessels and other vehicles. It was not announced as a big change. All these changes took place step by step. Well, today, call it whatsoever, it seems we are on the brink of a new age. Many have fair idea that the future will be much different if transhumanism prevails or 5G dominates our societies. Here is my question. Is the coronavirus pandemic a convenient beginning of a new global social engineering? Let me finish with another question mark. Will demonetization or limitation of US dollar in global trade or global trade order or balancing it with digital currencies also bring the end of democracy? The democracy we are familiar with, the democracy which has not built in a day, like Rome was not built in a day, the democracy which was almost based on US dollar since the beginning of Cold War. So when the US dollar replaced, would the democratic way of life replaced? Thank you for your time.